Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's lesson, we are going to dive into some essential CSS components that will make designing our web pages more beautiful. We will cover something based on selectors, font size, padding, margin, background color, and border. So let's get started. So in section 1, we'll be talking about selectors. First of all, what are selectors? So selectors are used to target HTML elements that you want to style. So in the HTML series I did previously, I made mention of some selectors. I think I did mention of 4 types of selectors. But as we go on to explore more coding opportunities, you get to see there are various types of selectors you can use. So in this series too, I'll be using similar selectors in this series. But then in our coding classes or lessons, you'll be exposed to newer selectors. Alright, so the first selector to talk about is the element selector. So the element selector simply means make reference to the HTML element. So if you have a paragraph on your page, make reference to that element. If you have an H1, make reference to that element. And if you have a section or even the body element itself, you can make reference to that element. So let's head over to VS Code and see how to use that. So for example, I already have some typed here. So I have an H1 element in my HTML code. So I make reference to that H1 element. Guys, you should remember that make sure you always link your CSS to the HTML file. Otherwise, what you are going to type in the CSS won't reflect on your page. Alright, so with my CSS link, I have my HTML element here, and I have used the selector type, which is the element selector, to make reference to that element. Okay, so you can also make reference to the body. So simply type the body and let's change its background color to this. Let me open with live server. All right, so this is our output. Okay, so let's move on to the next type of selector, which is the class selector. So with the class selector, we give our HTML elements specific or unique class names. So for example, the H1 has a class of name. Let's say name. Yeah. Name for the class name. So to do that, we simply start by typing class. So inside our opening tag of the element in the HTML file, you give a space, type class, hit enter, then give your element a unique name. So for this example, I'm going to use just name as my class name. Save that, and to make reference or to target that class name, we start with a full stop or a dot. So dots are used for class names, whereas element selectors have no um, dots or any signs beginning them. So dots are specifically used for class names. So dot and the name follows. So let me do that in Notepad to enlarge it a bit. Okay, so we have class name dot and its name. So this is the syntax for using a class selector. All right. So font size 200 pixel. So font size 200 pixel. And when you save that, see the effect happening live on the web page. Okay, so let me add a little bit of color here. So color to blue. All right, so that's it for class selectors. And the third selector to talk about is the ID selectors. So similar to the class selectors, ID starts with a hashtag. So instead of a dot, we have a hashtag. So hashtag is a symbol or sign that starts or indicates that we are using an ID selector. So to do that, head over to your HTML code. Inside, all right, let's just create a new. So let's create a section. Inside this section, have a paragraph with an ID, paragraph with an ID. ID. So we type ID of me. Okay. So let's type something inside the paragraph. Byte code. Alright. So making reference to an ID selector in CSS. I said we start with a hashtag. So hashtag, then the ID's name. So me. So me will have a font size of 200 pixel. Okay, and a font color of blue. All right, so that's it, guys, for IDs and classes. Okay, so the last selector I would like to talk about is the attribute selector. So attribute selectors are quite different based on what we have discussed so far. So attribute selectors target the attribute of an element. So to illustrate this, inside this section, I would like to create an input. So input, and you are using an attribute selector. So an input with an attribute type equals to a text. So to use an attribute selector, over to Notepad, its syntax is quite something like input and this input with a type equals, then you make reference to the attribute, so text. All right, so let me just copy this and paste it over here to see if it works. All right, now let's add I didn't save this. Okay, yeah. So our input is working. Let's add padding to increase this. So let me give it a padding of 30 pixel to see. Voila, so it works. So that's how to use the attribute type selector. Okay, before we move on to our next section, I would like to talk about some tricks. If you guys could remember, I said there are a lot of tricks in using VS Code, and as we move on, I'll be showing you guys some new tricks that makes the coding faster and easier for you. So let me enlarge my VS Code. Okay. So let's say I'm creating a paragraph that has a class name of me, or a class name of anything you want to name your class. So usually what you do is create the paragraph first, then head over to the opening tag of the paragraph, give a space and type class before you give it your class name. So let me give it a class name of just. Okay, so this took quite some seconds to finish, but then there's a trick or a shortcut to get this very easily. So to do that, we type p, and with our class target or our class referencing from CSS in mind, I said classes are referenced or targeted with a dot. So to get the class name and the class attribute typed or generated in VS Code. Give it a paragraph and a dot. So dot means this paragraph has a class, and what class name do you want to give to your paragraph? So I want to give it a class name of you. Hit enter, and voila, there we go. VS Code generates this for us without us wasting a second or any time typing class equal to quotation mark in our name. Okay, so we can do same for IDs. So same ID sign is a hashtag, then the ID name tag, and it generates that too for us. All right, so guys, that's all on selectors. All right, guys, so the next thing I would like to talk about in this lesson is font size. And what at all about font size am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about the units used in CSS. So there are various and numerous type of units you can use in CSS. So from my previous lessons, I've been using the pixel unit. So let's illustrate this. Byte code. All right. So I've been using the pixel unit for quite some time, and I want to show you guys other units we have. So font size, and use 100%. Let's see what it does on our page. Where are you, VS Code? Okay, so I just used 100% and nothing worked. Okay, so there was no sign of change or improvement. So let's use 100 pixel and save this. So you see, so percentage are more like taking the normal width and height of our font. So when you reduce the percentage to a 50 instead of 100, we get a smaller version of our font size. And when you increase it to its full potential, which is 100%, you get its maximum. So what if I want to go beyond its maximum? Then the idea of pixel comes in. So pixel enlarges or makes our font go beyond its maximum. We also have the M's, which is very big. So let's say 1.5 M's. Oh, that's small. Um, 10. Let's do 10 M's. Okay, so 10 M's. We also have REM and REM. So REM, which is I think similar to M's. Okay, so aside pixel, percentage, and REMs and M's, there are I think viewport. Okay, this yes, the VH. Yeah. So guys, you can explore more on the font size and its units. All right. So that's all for font size and its unit. Hello, welcome to another lesson. So next on the list is padding. So what at all is padding? What at all is padding? What did I just do? No, I don't want this setup. This. No, I don't want this. Okay, this. And no. Hold on, guys. Just a minute. All right. Yeah. Wanted you. Padding. Next on the list is padding. So what at all is padding? So padding is the space between the content of an element and its border. So the content of an element and its border. How can we illustrate this? So let's head over to VS Code and do a little bit of illustration. I'm just going to keep this line of code. So Control X to cut it off and create a container to hold the paragraph. So to create a container, containers are normally used or are normally referred to as divisions. And divisions can be typed or can be referred to as divs in HTML. So div stands for division, which are used to create containers or sections on our body. So divs represents containers. So I'm creating a div to hold the paragraph. So div, and I give it a paragraph which contains this. All right. So normally you don't see anything over here. And let's add a class here, a class of container, or a class of content. Okay, just container will do. So container. So let's reference container first. Container. Let's give it a width of 20 pixel, a height. Okay, just a width of 20 pixels. Okay, a height. Let's add height. Height of 20 pixel. 20 pixel. I think that's a square. And let's give it a border to border 1px solid. That didn't go according to plan. 100%. 100%. Okay, so this is what I wanted to do. But then my width is too much. The width is too much. Let me reduce this to 40. No, still too much. 20. Okay, 20 is perfect. So I want to illustrate how padding works. So I said padding is a space between the content of an element and its border. So over here you could see between the content of an element and its border. So the border up and the border down has a little bit of padding. So how can I add padding to the left side of my box or my container to make my text align probably somewhere in the center? One could say you can just use the align text center. Others could use the padding. So let's use padding and see what happens. So padding inside this. So um padding left 20 pixel. Alright, so we realize the padding 20 pixel, padding left 20 pixel give us a little bit of space over here. Okay, so there are two forms of adding a padding. So you can give it a direct padding, which is just typing padding 20px and watch what happens. So it gives an additional padding to every corners around or inside the box. So it gives an additional padding to the top, gives an additional padding to the right, gives an additional padding to the bottom and the left. So how do I specify? Probably I don't want the padding to affect the top and the bottom. I just want it to affect the left and right. So you can just hyphenate this and add left to do that, or just add right to do that, and it works. But there is another way of doing this as well. So padding like this. The first criteria over here, let me illustrate this on notepad before we get into the code. So what I'm trying to say is padding can have four criteria. So let's say 0, 0, 0, and a 0. So the first criteria is for top. The second criteria is for right. The third one is for bottom or bottom. And the last one is for left. So, oh, cancel. So 0 for top, 0 for right, 0 for bottom, and 0 for left. So let's use this idea in our code and see what happens. So I want only my left and right to be padded, or to have the padding. So 20 pixel on the top. So I don't want top, so I give it a 0 pixel. The next criteria is our right, and I want to reduce the padding on the right. So let's say a negative 10 pixel. Let's see what happens. The next criteria is the bottom. I don't want the bottom to be affected, so I give it a 0. And the next one, or the last one, is the left. So 20 pixel on the left. And for some reason my left didn't take place. Oh, I didn't type this thing well. Yeah, pardon. Pardon. Hmm. Top, right, bottom, left. 20 pixel on the left, and you are still not working. 20 pixel here. Oh, okay. So the negative was affecting that. All right. So I think I don't need my width. Oh, I just want to get a smaller box so that we see the effect. 10%. It's 10%. Okay. So 20 over here. All right. So this is what I wanted to do. So this is how the padding works. So top, right, left, bottom. Oh, top, right, bottom, left. Yeah, not the other way around. So top, right, um, bottom, and left. So that's it for padding. So padding adds space in between the content and its border. All right. So you should also remember that once you are adding a padding to an element, it will eventually increase the size of that element. So if you guys realize, the more padding we added to our box, the more the size increased. So let's see if that's true. 40 and 40 here. So 40 on left and right. And you see the size increase. Okay. The next to talk about is margin. Margins are similar to padding, but just that margins add space around the element, not inside the element. So margins add space around the element. So outside the borders of our element, that's where we have our margin. So margins also use the same padding format. So let's go to change this to margin. All right. So margin use the same padding format. Oh, why did I hide this? So we also have the same criteria: top, right, bottom, and left. And you can also specify whether you want a margin top, margin right, margin left, margin bottom. Okay, so let's add a margin to our box to see what happens. So margin 10 pixel on the top, 20 pixel on the right, 10 pixel on the bottom, and a 20 pixel on the left. Okay, so we see the effect. Let me shift it from the top a bit. So 10 pixel to, let's say, 25 pixel, and a 0 pixel on the bottom, because there is nothing there too. Okay, so that's how margins also works. So guys, you can be playing around with this CSS properties to explore more, and just be playing around with this to also suit your design. Okay, so the next on the list is background color, and I have made a video or a lesson explaining more about our CSS color code types. So if you haven't watched that, you can go to my channel, go through the videos. You are going to see CSS, introduction to CSS, which talks about the CSS color coding type. So I said we are going to talk about background color. So let's add a background color, and let me use hex color code. So hashtag 76FEDC. I don't know what color is that. Okay, so this is our background color. So background colors can also take a different criteria. So this is a hex. You can also have the HSL color code. You can also have the HWB color code. You can also have RGB color code, and you can have the color itself. So the name of the color. I don't know what color is that. Let me just use blue to do that. Just blue. So you can also use the color name itself to represent our background color. All right. And lastly, I would like to talk about border. So all right, there's it. I did an illustration over here. So border, let me copy this code and expand it here. So borders are more like adding lines around our elements. So borders are more like adding lines around our elements, and you can specify the border width with this. So the 1px you see over here specifies the border width. The solid you see over here specifies our border type, and the black criteria here specifies our border color. So let's try editing each criteria to see what we get. So inside our VS Code, select the solid, and I think the next one is a dash or something. Yeah, dashed this, and Control S, and let me increase this to see the effect. Let's say 5px. Okay, so this is dashed. I normally don't use borders like that, so I'm not used to 8 criteria. Dash solid, I think feed or something. No, there's no feed here. So solid and dash, but then you can also research more on the criteria for the border. Sorry, not background color, for border. All right, so then just keep this a solid, and the next one on the line is the color. So you can change the border color to any to suit you, to any color to suit you. Okay, so I think that wraps up our lesson for today on selectors, font size, padding, margin, background color, and border in CSS. I hope you found this information helpful, and make sure you practice more on this concept. Also, you can create a challenging project for yourself to help you practice more. If you are finding it difficult to create challenging projects, you can head over to any of my social media accounts. Give me a personal DM. I'll give you a project for you to work on, a beginner-friendly project for you to work on, so that you can get these codes at your fingertip. Also, guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Hit the notification button as well, so that whenever I upload any new lesson, you may not miss out. Bye. See you guys on the next lesson. Bye bye.